This conference will now be recorded.
I don't have the ability to share my screen. I think it says the organizer needs to give it to me.
Hey, Dr. Cobb, this is
Yes.
Dr. Payne. You're already presenter. Please, you can share it now.
Okay, very good.
You're now open, Professor.
There we go. Okay, I see myself on the screen now. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right, good. So I've got the chat window up, so there's going to be certain slides for interaction. So please, if you don't feel like coming off and going off mute and talking, please use the chat feature. So just a little background for myself and for you. I have been working with computers since I was about 13 years old. It's a little over 40 years ago, hard to believe. But if you are in my age bracket, you may remember the Texas Instruments TRS-80 computer that you had to use cassette tape to load programs and games, or the Apple II Plus, which used the floppy disks to load games. And so I've been playing with computers for a long time. But honestly, offensive cybersecurity and really network and communications and computers still there's a little bit of a mystery to it. And so over the last couple of years, I've really gotten to this hobby of looking at offensive cybersecurity. And I really think anyone can get into it. And my hope is if you are an expert in cybersecurity, there's something in this presentation you can take away. And if you don't even know how to spell cybersecurity, or you feel like every time you touch your computer, something breaks, that there's something here that can at least get you started and feel more comfortable about cybersecurity. All right, let's see here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so a lot of times cybersecurity folks talk about this idea of a CIA triad. And it's not the government organization CIA, but it represents confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And they're very simple terms, but it can be very difficult to provide these things in today's environment. So when you think of confidentiality, I like to use this triangle or triad in terms of banking. And so you think the things that you don't want other people know about your bank account, those are the things that would fall underneath the confidentiality aspect. Integrity. Would it matter to anyone if day to day your overall balance changed with you not knowing it? So one day it could be $1 million and the next day it could be 100. That would be a real problem for most people. And then availability is probably the easiest concept to kind of get our heads around. When you go to a bank, an ATM machine, you want to get that money out. You want to access that account when you want it, where you want it. So that kind of gets availability. So, I've used this slide several times about the changing and challenging nature of cybersecurity. If you've been doing cybersecurity for any amount of time, as a professional job or even as a hobby, you know that it's challenging and it changes constantly. If you don't do it, you know that it's challenging because every day you see how there's different attacks. Recently, there's been a bunch of ransomware attacks where attackers are basically holding your data hostage. They've done it to cities. Baltimore was recently attacked in the last 6 months. And they hold out that data until you pay the attackers, and then they release it to you so that you can have your data back. In some cases,
Professor, what kind of attack we call that? if you can elaborate on it, ransomware.
Please refrain from questioning at this time. Let him finish the event, and then we'll ask later. Go ahead, Professor.
It was okay, Dr. Ong. I didn't hear the question was the problem. But I think what it was basically, it was a ransomware attack. And so some cases you don't even realize you've been attacked. And I'll tell you, there's many a time when I was an IT director that we had so much data that we sometimes didn't even realize we were under attack. And there were several cases that you spent a lot of time trying to find that needle in the haystack. So here's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully some of these, like I said before, you can take a nugget, or at least this might be a starting point for you to go into further detail to study the problem. As many of my students in CS 501 have probably heard me talk about, there are so many areas of cybersecurity that you can get involved with. It's not just, hey, I'm cybersecurity. There is many jobs and many problems to solve in cybersecurity as there are IT problems and IT areas to solve. So you have a wide open career field to attack in the cybersecurity realm. So on the last slide, you can use your chat if you don't want to. That's probably the best, to use chat. Just send me like a text on what you saw on the last picture, on the last slide. Now, so I know some of you on this call have seen this before, so try not to give that away. But if you've never seen the last slide, what did you see? Well, let me ask it a different way. Did anybody see an animal, a chameleon? Yeah, so thank you, Merle. We have a brave soul. You get 100 points in CS 501, although you're not in CS 501, but I appreciate the courage to come out. Yeah, you saw a green lizard. Thank you. Did anybody see a person? All right, let me go back. There's actually two people in this picture. There's no lizard. So I'm going to use the laser pointer.
This is Mark O'Connell. I saw a lizard of some kind.
Yes. So that it's actually two people. So this is the person's head on the top, their arm, and then they're laying down. And then the bottom person, here's the head of the bottom person. And that's one of their arms, shoulders, hands, and then their legs wrap around the head. Has anybody ever seen this before?
No.
Yeah. So I like this because it kind of relates to me, because, you know, sometimes you can be looking right at a problem and not be able to see really the problem.
Very good.
Yep. So this is a little bit of an older slide. It's static, but it was published in 2017. And the indication here is it's really showing the reported government cybersecurity incidences. And so you can see the trend. It's not a good trend. This site here, I'm going to escape from I'm going to actually show you the dynamic page. But this is the Information is Beautiful website, and it shows graphically the different data breaches. So even if you're not, let me escape out of there real quick. And let's see. Okay, here it is right here. So this is a graphical look at the size of the number of records lost in different data breaches. And then there's some filtering you can do to filter based on the method, the attack. If you're looking at academic, government, healthcare, you can see it right there on the left. And it can give you the method of attack. Additionally, if you click into these, you have a link to some background data on the actual attack itself. I think it's really good for particularly non-cybersecurity managers and supervisors to kind of see how big this problem is. And sometimes, because again, going back to my first slide in my introduction, it's still a bit of a mystery to me, the whole cybersecurity. It's an unseen attack. So this is helpful if you want to do some research. Okay, so one of the problems is this idea of assumed trust. And so there are, again, multiple ways that adversaries can get into your systems, your data, and many other aspects of your life. But cybersecurity really is pretty new in terms of its life. I mean, if you really think computers, I mean, you can argue they go back to the 1950s, but really home computers, like I said, 1980s, and that was just the beginning. The problem is these systems were not necessarily designed with security as a priority. And so a lot of these systems had assumed trust. So let's take a look at that and see where we can see where some of our vulnerabilities in life are. So this is a picture. I do a lot of traveling. Well, I used to before the virus, but I did a lot of traveling. And this is a hotel I stayed at. And this is, for a lack of a better term, their server room. And they had telephone equipment, they had server equipment. But if you notice, they also have non-IT stuff going on here. You can't really see over here on the left necessarily but this is janitorial supplies right here. Here you've got conference room equipment. This door was open the entire week I was in that hotel. So maybe it's not exactly assumed trust, but someone in the hotel is thinking, oh, that's okay to have this door open. And it's okay to have janitorial and conference people having access to the IT room, which is really a bad idea. So the second thing I want to talk about is assumed trust, something you probably have in your car right now. So the controller area network bus is a part of most automobiles, and it's a way that we can get onboard diagnostics. So this device right here is probably somewhere near your steering wheel that the manufacturer, the car manufacturer has, so they can do maintenance on your car. A lot of times you'll get a code that pops up, and they'll plug in and they'll be able to say, oh, this is something wrong with your tire or something wrong with your engine, and we got to do something. The problem is, when this was designed, anything on this bus trusts everything else on the bus. So if I can get on your car bus, I can then access and do things to your engine, your transmission, your steering. I can affect your brakes. So these are all not very good things to do. And I've got a book here. I know my screen is probably too small, but I've got an entire book on the car hacker's handbook. And so there's detailed instructions on how to do penetration testing on cars. And I actually took a 2-day class on it. So what I'm going to show you right now is a quick video. So just give me a second. That was one thing I did not load up. So There it is. Give me a second for this to skip. All right.
I just have to say that we can't hear anything on this side.
Oh. All
You
right.
might want to click on the where it says no volume. Click on that to allow us in the video. There you go.
Let's try that. Let me know. Can you hear that?
I still cannot. No.
All right. Let me just see.
You may have to enable sound when you on
Yeah.
your Zoom share screen.
That's exactly right.
I forgot that. All right. What I'll do is I'll just provide the link in here so that you can watch that on your free time. Apologize for that. Okay, so there's the link there. But if you haven't seen that GPAC, it's very interesting, and it basically shows you the vulnerability you have with the CAN bus for that assumed trust. So just one final thing on the assumed trust is a lot of network communications, again, were developed with these vulnerabilities built in, that assumed trust. And so there's several that are out there. I'm going to demo one today that you can take a look at and see the problems with it. So I'm going to start off with the Eternal Blue exploit. And so this exploit was developed basically around, let me go into the presentation mode here. So what it allows you to do is you are able to remotely execute code on another computer if you can actually exploit the vulnerability. The exploit uses this vulnerability in the Windows operating system. And so they have a protocol that allows, and you use this every day, that allows you to share files across a network. And so this protocol, if you, in version 1 of the protocol, there was assumed trust. And it allowed, if certain packets were sent, an attacker could take over a machine and do bad things to it. The thing that I'll just point out to you is that when you watch me do the demo, there's no user interaction required. If the vulnerabilities exist, the attacker can get into your system. Okay, so what I'm going to use, some of you know this, that if you're in my class for 501, we're going to use, so we use the NICE Virtual Cyber Network. It's the National Initiative for Cyber Education. And so there are over 100 different challenges in a virtualized environment that you can learn from attacker's point of view. And so again, what we're going to do is we're all going to operate as the attacker, and I'm going to use this Eternal Blue exploit to gain access into that server, and I'm going to download a file from that victim computer. Is that it here? Yeah. Okay, so you're looking at the NICE challenge. So what you have is, here is the virtual network. And so right here's my cursors on it. This is our attacker security computer. It uses Kali Linux. For those that are not familiar with Kali Linux, it's a Linux version that is really set up for penetration testing. It's got really a lot of really good tools that you can use. We'll be using it for Metasploit, and I'll talk a little bit more about Metasploit a little bit later. But it's a tool that we can use to exploit or use the exploit that a cybersecurity researcher has developed to take advantage of this server message block vulnerability. We'll be attacking this server over here, the dev web Windows server. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the security desktop. Okay, so I'm logged in. And one thing I'll just tell you is that for the sake of time, I will be skipping some steps, but realize there would be a lot of reconnaissance and a lot of research that the attacker would be doing before just going in and starting this. So there are things you can do to see if the system, in this case, the server, is vulnerable to the attack. So I'm going to bring up a command prompt. And so, like I said, we're going to use a application that's part of Kali Linux. It's the Metasploit Framework, and it is just loading up now. I can make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is the tool, the framework. And again, this is where I like to highlight that there's cybersecurity analysts that are like programmers, developers that develop these exploits. You see that it automatically loads with 1,656 different exploits. We're only going to show you one today. I don't develop exploits, but that would be an area, if you're interested in doing that, you could be that developer doing that. So I'm just going to use what someone else has created. I'm aware of Eternal Blue. So again, I'm skipping a couple things here, but I know the name of the Eternal Blue exploit. So I'm typing it in now. So I say use exploit Windows SMB. Remember the protocol, the SMB protocol. And then I know that MS17 is the name of the actual exploit. I hit that, and now I've got that exploit loaded in memory, if you will. And so I'm going to look at my options. And so if I show options, I see some options I need to set. Now, a lot of them are set for default. So all I have to do is tell the machine the target, the remote target of my attack. In this case, we already did the research, and we know that server is vulnerable to this attack. So we're setting the IP address, which again, I found out, but it's that dev web server is 16.20.11. So now I have that set. And now I have to set a payload. So at this point, I could run the exploit, but what I want it to do is I want to create a tunnel from that server back to me, so that I can then do some other things. And in this case, I'm going to download a file. So in this case, I need to set a payload. And this is going to be, oops. Just a little slow on the typing there. So this is the payload I'm going to use. Now, I'm not going to go into the details on this. Please join CS 501. We'll talk a little bit about this or the other cybersecurity courses. I know the other cyber instructors teach more offensive cyber in their classes, but the reverse TCP is just allowing the computer to create the connection back to me. So this actually is a way to get away around the firewall, because I'm not creating a connection to the server's connecting to me. So this is very, very powerful payload. So now I'm ready. Oh, let me show options one more time. I've got to set my local host IP address. And so I'm going to set lhost. And my IP, I'm going to know I need .16.30.6. And I could have figured that out very quickly with a command on my computer. So I'm going to know my IP address. Again, I'll leave all the defaults. And so now I click exploit. And hopefully a live attack actually works. Okay, good. So you can see some of the instructions that are going on, but basically you can see it's attacking the SMB protocol. And then this right here where it says win tells me I made the connection. So now I'm connected to that machine. And so what I can do is I can say, I can do PWD, which is print working directory. And now I'm seeing a Windows machine, but remember I'm on a Linux machine. So I'm in the other machine. I'm not in the Linux machine that I started on. So a couple of things I can do is I can get system privileges. And now I've got them. And again, our goal is to download a secret file. So let's go to, we'll just take a look at what they have in here. And I'll do dir. I'll change directory one more time. And so now I'm seeing the top level directory. Let's see what's in the users file. And I look in there, oh, look at that. There's Bill Gates file. So that's probably interesting to me. And I do a directory. And so it really doesn't matter at this point. I'm just going to download a file just to demonstrate it. I'm going to download that user initialization file. Click download. And so it's downloaded. At this point, I can exit out. And now exit one more time. And now I'm back to the Kali machine, and I'm just going to list the contents of the directory. And there is now the downloaded file from Bill Gates's directory. Again, the key thing here is there was no user involvement. I didn't have to trick the user. I certainly could use tools to do that, but in this case, this exploit is so dangerous that I didn't have to involve the user at all. You just have to have some vulnerability in the machine, and I'm able to go in and come back out. Any questions or comments on that?
Hey, Professor, I have a quick question. This is Deepthi.
Yes.
So while you're trying to connect to the other system through the IP address, typically most of the systems will have its own, firewalls and McAfees to avoid the vulnerabilities of other systems getting hacked by their systems. So while you're doing the exploit command, why doesn't kick off that particular, mechanism? I was a little confused and surprised.
Yeah, so in this case, because the way they craft the now part of the part is I skipped over some of the reconnaissance. So there is a tool, if you're familiar with it, the tool in Kali that allows you to test before you even go to the exploit stage. So you can test to see, is it vulnerable? And if it is, it will accept it because it's using a very old protocol. Now, it's very easy to update this. In fact, Microsoft, within a couple months, had a patch for this vulnerability. The problem is not everybody patches, and they don't patch on the same time frame. And so that was the vulnerability that got out of it.
So missing of updates will raise this particular task of.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the next step on this. In this nice challenge environment, you actually apply the patch, then you rerun the attack, and the attack fails.
Got it.
So that's the key. And you're right, firewalls, it's kind of a cat and mouse kind of game between the firewalls and these attacks. So the people developing these attacks have got to make sure that they are at least somewhat stealthy to deliver that payload in that package. Good question. Thank you.
Professor, I have a question.
Yes.
And it might be a stupid one. I apologize, but
No,
where are you getting these commands from? Like the net user, INI, you know, like all the stuff that you're making it do. Like, where are you getting these? Is there like a directory like that has all these commands in it? You know?
Yeah. So right here, this is from the Windows server. So this is not on my machine. And so I was just using your typical Windows commands, change directory, and then the download command is part of this interpreter process. So that's part of, once you set up the Metasploit exploit, you actually get that. And it's really understanding DOS and Linux-based commands. So if you are, one of the things I'll talk about the second half of this presentation is, okay, if this interests you, what do you do to start learning and getting more skilled at that? And so that's what I'll talk about. What's the next step for you to get better at these kinds of things? So again, for the sake of time, I kind of went over those commands a little quickly.
That's fine. Where do I pick up on like DOS and Linux commands? Is there something online or a specific video or a course, you know, that I can touch up on those stuff?
Yeah, so there's many resources out there. In fact, last week the CS 501 class was introduced to basic Linux commands. So the first thing I would do is just Google Linux commands. The other thing is you have access. You might have access. If you have access to LinkedIn or lynda.com videos, check with the library. Even if your local library gives access to lynda.com, and they have many resources on basics of Linux. But I think you can find a lot of YouTube videos and resources out there before you pay anything, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, let me, so in any case, we were talking about assume trust. I find there's a lot of trust out there for everyone. If you ever been to a convenience store and people, particularly in the wintertime, they leave their cars running outside. I find this amazing. And so, I start thinking like a hacker. Now, I don't do anything illegal, I promise, I don't. There's an ethical hacker part of this. And so when people leave their cars running, I think, gosh, I just want to jump in the car and drive it away like 10 yards or go hide it around the corner. I look at like hotel breakfast buffets. Well, when we were traveling more, there's an assumed trust that if you were there and eating at that breakfast, that you're part of the hotel. But I'm sure if you wanted to, you could eat breakfast for free almost every day. And then you've probably seen the movie Wedding Crashers and people doing that kind of thing that you can hide in there. I'm not advocating any of these. I'm just highlighting the fact that there's a lot of assumed trust out there. So, okay, so we're going to transition to the, okay, you did all this, but what can I do? So we can understand our offense. We can understand the offensive tactics, techniques, and procedures by understanding, by improving our defense, we understand their offense. So you think about sports. I know there's a lot of folks that have played soccer. If you're ready for a big match, you're probably going to look at what is the other team's offensive strategy. So we're going to design our defensive strategy for that. But that applies to all sports. You know, in the U.S., football is a big deal with looking at what is the offensive team going to do. We set up our defense to meet that. This is no different in business. If you kind of look at your competitors in business, how are they doing things that you may change your tactics to kind of meet that? So why not cybersecurity? Why not learn more about the offense to improve our defense and improve our defensive outcomes? Because too often we're just like sitting ducks and you know, we can't protect everything. It's just too costly. Okay, so this is a little self-assessment, if you wouldn't mind, in the chat. Tell me where you're at in terms of offensive cybersecurity. You know very little to, I've played with Kali Linux or Metasploit or these other tools. So just go ahead and type that in the chat, A, B, or C, so I kind of get a sense of where everybody's at. I will tell you that most of the time that I do this, most people are an A. So Dipti, yeah, you should be saying C because you've completed Kali Linux challenges.
I say, but still I'm learning, Professor.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. Okay. So, you know, sometimes you hear hacker and people think negative thing, but I would argue that most of you are hackers in some ways. Honestly, if you look at this definition, you all hack, you all figure things out. You know, when I had the trouble with the audio up front, there were several people that already in their mind knew that I forgot to click system audio. And I tell you, I'm on 4 different of these virtual platforms, and they all have a different way to share audio. And, you know, it's no excuse, but in any case. So I think most people are hackers who are trying to figure out the world today. So we got to start thinking like a hacker. So you know, if you're familiar, does anybody know what an Easter egg is? So Easter eggs are sometimes things put into movies or programs by the developers as either a joke or maybe a backdoor. Years ago, the Excel flight simulator, if you clicked in a certain cell, I'm sorry, in Excel, the spreadsheet program, if you clicked in a certain cell, you would start up a flight simulator. You had to do a couple, you had to type an equation and click the chart menu. But in Excel 95, you could do that. Disney movies, there's all kinds of Easter eggs in Disney movies. And then this is a picture of a full-blown computer. It's about the size of a deck of cards, a Raspberry Pi that some of you may be familiar with. All these things kind of tie into thinking like a hacker and doing things. Oops. So offensive cybersecurity training and education, again, like I said before, there's a mystery to it. And to me, it's very exciting and very interesting. It can be fun, and there's a lot of resources out there you can use. So I'm going to start off with VirtualBox. This is where I left the screen up. So let me just bring up VirtualBox. If you're not familiar with VirtualBox or VMware, you can get in trouble with running some of the offensive cybersecurity tools in a live production network. So highly recommend, well, I wouldn't recommend, I just tell you, don't do it. Don't do it on live because you can get in a lot of trouble running some of these exploits. So what you can do is you can use VirtualBox or VMware, which create a virtual sandbox on your computer. So what you're looking at right here, I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 10, 11. I've got 11 different machines, virtual machines running, not running yet, but are on my machine that I can spin up at any time and play with and actually do different offensive techniques and just play around with it and learn. And so this is where eventually I'd recommend you go to play around on your computer. So again, VMware and VirtualBox are free resources that you can install on your computer. In the next couple slides, we'll talk about Metasploit, Juice Shop, and Hack the Box.
Professor, can you repeat again what's the purpose of a VMware? Yeah, virtual.
So they create this virtual sandbox that you're protected, that you can attack other machines so that you won't get in trouble. So you can experiment, you can break things, and it won't affect the real world.
You can simulate hacking a device, but not like a real person's. Okay, cool.
That's exactly right. You will not go to jail, and you won't have you know, people coming to your front door.
I was thinking of practicing on my roommates, but I guess I'll use that instead.
Yeah, let's don't do that. So we already talked about the Metasploit framework. I talked about it very, very quickly. So it's a very powerful framework. Again, you've got cyber researchers creating and developing these tools that you can use to exploit vulnerabilities. It comes with Kali Linux. And then you go, well, okay, great, I've got it, but how do I practice? So the offensive security has created 3 purposely built virtual machines that are built with vulnerabilities so that you can attack them. So there's your practice right there. So I'll really quick back. Notice here I've got Metasploitable 2. It's powered off right now. I've got Kali Linux. I actually have 2 versions of Kali Linux on here. I got a bunch of other things as well. The second thing I'll tell you is if you are into web development or you're into web vulnerabilities, the Owasp program is the Open Web Application Security Project, and they created an entire environment of, they have 94 challenges of different levels of difficulty that test your ability to basically hack the website. So it's an e-commerce website that sells juice. And so they were developed. There's a scoreboard. I list here that I use version 9.3 with Node JavaScript 10. It takes a little bit to install, but they keep it updated with the most current types of vulnerabilities. And so this next slide, this is just a screenshot of the scoreboard. And so one of the challenges is just finding the scoreboard. So once you get in, you get different levels from 1 to 6. And then down here, you get a description. So it kind of walks you through. The other nice thing it has is hints. So if you get stuck, you can click on the hint and figure out what to do next. And then there's a bunch of resources online that you can search to get some hints as well. Again, that's installed on your personal machine as a virtual machine. I think it's one of the better exploits or better virtual machines to practice on. And then once you get good and you're tired of Juice Shop and you've kind of developed a little bit of a handling, take a look at Hack the Box. This is the website that you go to here on the right, and that's all you get. And you gotta, to even sign up and get access to the Hack the Box site, you have to hack the invite. And so again, what you get is once you get in, you get access to a bunch of virtual machines that you can attack on their website and learn. And then there's a free version and a VIP. One thing I'd recommend is avoid walkthroughs that show you the solution. There's a bunch out there, but that's not the point. The point is to learn and to be frustrated and to have patience. Okay, the final section we'll talk about is capture the flags. So the capture the flag events. This is another way that you can start learning more about offensive security, and you can actually team up with other people to compete. So again, here's another range of I've never played a capture the flag event to I've participated in several, or I've never heard of a capture the flag event. And I'll tell you, most people answer A on this one. So what is capture the flag? So the Boy Scouts, you might have played this game as a kid. Basically, it was a physical game where you hit a physical flag and you tried to find that flag from the other teams, and then you brought it back. And this was published back in the 1920s. Others may have been aware of a game called, a board game called Stratego, where you hit a flag and you play. It's kind of like chess or checkers type layout, but you try to find the other person's flag. But today, CTFs or capture the flags are more cybersecurity competitions. And so teams find electronic flags to earn points. There are many variants of capture the flags. What you're looking at right here is a picture of what I call the Super Bowl World Series of capture the flags. It's DEF CON, it's the annual hacker conference out in Las Vegas. And you don't just join this capture the flag. It takes, you have to qualify, and competition is very tough. So one of the problems in the past has been that there's a lot of prior knowledge needed to join these capture the flags, and it limited new folks from joining and participating. However, in the recent, since I've been doing more of this offensive cybersecurity research, you're seeing more and more use of capture the flags in the classroom, and it's involving new folks. And so my hope is that you could use this as a way to learn a little bit more. So like I said, there's multiple types. So you have attack defense is a popular one, but the most popular is Jeopardy style, where you have like a board of points and categories, and then you're able to pick and choose your challenge. This one is Facebook did their annual using kind of a map of the world, and you clicked on a country to answer your questions. So I'm just going to jump over to another one. This is the Pico Ctf, and so it's got a graphical interface that you can use. And so, let me lower this. So this is just an example of a warm-up challenge. So I'm logging into their system. And this would be a very entry-level challenge, but this would be kind of what you'd be looking at. So you get 50 points if you answer this correct. And it just is, it's not necessarily cybersecurity, but it's asking you to convert 70 in hex to what would it be in ASCII. And so I also have a hex converter up on this other screen, and I already did it. So 70 basically converts to P. So the way it works in this case is you have to type in this format to get the right answer. And I've already solved it, but that's basically it. And then you would continue on to other parts of the challenge. And so the other way to look at these challenges is you can actually look at the different categories. So if you're interested in reverse engineering, you can come and take a look at the challenge here. And again, you can create a team, so it doesn't have to be one person. I tend to do it by myself for the most part, and I'll find a topic that I'm interested in, and I'll try to solve those problems. So Pico Ctf is really more geared to the high school student, but I'll tell you, don't be tricked into thinking it's going to be easy, because a lot of these challenges are challenging, and that's why I like it. You could actually go back and do 2018 and the 2019 challenges whenever you want. CTFtime.org lists upcoming CTFs, and they're at different levels. You'll just have to go in there. I just copied this for today's talk. You can see that over the weekend there's 5 different challenges or CTFs you can join. And again, you have to look and see how challenging it is. Some might be more challenging than you're interested in, but I would just check them out. So what do? So again, I think you take a cyber class, you go out, like someone had asked, how do I get some experience? You can Google these different tools. You can look at offensive cybersecurity, free online training. Like I said, LinkedIn training, most of the libraries have that. I don't know if we at IGU have that or not, but it might be something that we could have access to. But certainly the public libraries have that. Participate in a CTF that you find. Use that juice shop challenge that I had talked about. If you're into the Metasploitable, you can use those vulnerable virtual machines to kind of use those. And then once you got a little bit more comfort, move on to hack the box, or do a CTF for actually trying to compete. But I'll tell you, I've joined CTFs where I played on 2 or 3 challenges, and I didn't worry about my score. And I researched, I tried different things, and it was very rewarding to get that 1 or 2 challenges. I didn't win any prizes. I was way down on the board, but you can just keep improving and then repeat this process. So let me finish up. Your assignment now is to complete your first CTF and then report back to me. So at that, I will open up the floor for questions. I know we have a couple minutes and any kind of clarifications.
So I have a quick question, Professor.
Yes.
So we were talking about defensive cyber attack in the last session, and here we are talking about offensive cyber attack. What was the difference between these two? A quick basic question.
I missed the first part. There was some background.
So in the last session of our class, we were discussing about defensive cyber attacking, and here we are discussing about offensive cyber attack process. So what is the difference between these two? That's what my concern is.
Right. So think about the defensive cybersecurity expert. How many areas do they need to be worried about? In this case, the example I did, the offensive, this was a product or a protocol that Microsoft Windows had employed. There might have gone years without people knowing about this vulnerability. So the defensive, as I was a defensive, and I think many of the professors who do cybersecurity have worked in a defensive, there is unlimited amount of potential attack vectors that you got to defend against. So like we talked about doing a defense in depth last week, that is one way to approach it, but you're not going to be 100% secure. So the offensive cybersecurity, in this case, may just be looking for eternal blue. Who do I want to attack? And it may be if they've already updated their systems, I'm not going to worry about them. I'm just going to keep on searching until I find a server that has this vulnerability. Because I'm not going to worry about, if they've already patched their system, I'm going to move on to the next system. But eventually I'm going to find a system that you haven't patched for whatever reason, and I'm going to get in.
Got it. Thanks, Professor.
Sure.
Do you have more questions? Professor, I have a question.
Yeah.
I must admit, but I'm not familiar with the technical terminologies in cybersecurity. However, I want to know the steps and resources you can leverage to keep the end user safe.
Yes.
And can you cite examples of scams and phishing emails that cyber criminals use?
Yeah, so you've probably all been subject to a phishing attack where someone is sending you an email. Years ago, it was someone was saying, "Give me your credit card information. I've got a bunch of money. I'll pass to you." That kind of thing. So a lot of times, the tools that the attacker will use are very rudimentary. Just harvest all the emails. So training and education of users is the first line of defense, because if a user clicks on a link, that link could take them to a website that then causes all kinds of problems. So your organization is really the first line of defense to make sure you're trained and understand, at least on an annual basis, but probably more often than annually, to be able to identify these kinds of things. So I would never click on a link that, one, I ever requested, or I'm sure it came from a valid source. The other thing is, if someone calls me on the phone and asks me for my personal information, I say, "Hey, I'd really like to provide that information to you. You called me." And this is the same, this would be in the physical world on the phone, but this kind of goes to an email, an unsolicited email. I'm not replying to, and I'm not clicking anything.
Okay, thank you for that. If you have more questions, I think Dr. Abate has questions. Please go ahead, Dr. Abate.
Dr. Ruby, this is Dr. Prim. I see one of the questions posted, I think texted, maybe you answered, Dr. Cobb. Merle, she's asking, how do social media organizations like Twitter and Facebook track and kill bots on their platforms? I think both accounts.
Throwing all the political jokes aside, I mean, I don't know exactly what tools they use. You know, I have to say, I'm not sure how they do that exactly. I'm sure they've got tools to develop to kind of see that. I know that's a problem, but that's really not my area of expertise. Maybe someone on the line kind of knows what they do. But that's a real issue right now.
So if you have more questions, please raise it up.
There are tools out there, Merle, that I can create hundreds of thousands of bots from multiple computers by basically that attack I showed you. There's a botnet manager that someone developed, and so you know, that's the closest experience I have to it. So I know it's very easy to create these bots, and then what they'll do is folks that are doing the attack will set these up on multiple computers around the world and then launch at the same time.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I think there's no more question. I want to thank you, Professor, for this event, and I hope our students were able to learn from it. Thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you again. Have a great day. Dr. Safar, do you like to say something for Professor?
Thank you, Dr. Cobb. I really enjoy even expert in cybersecurity, but I really enjoy it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And I'll hang on until everybody leaves.
Thank you, Professor. Have a nice day.
You too, Peter.
Thank you, Professor.
Yep, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor.
Have a good day.
Thank you, my friend.
Very helpful training. Thank you, Professor.
Oh, good. Glad you could come.
I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not going. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
Will you be at the office on Tuesday? Thank you.
Why not we push it to Thursday?
Well, Dr. Prim set it up.
Okay. I
may be in Alabama on Thursday.
Thursday, you'll be out of town.
Well, we're trying to figure that out. My daughter's graduating from Warrant Officer Candidate School in Alabama. And,
really?
Yeah. Thank you. But, her class is. What's that?
Following her dad's footsteps.
Yeah. Her class is under quarantine right now, so they're all getting tested because about 4 or 5 students came down with it. And
really?
So they don't know if they're going to release them next Wednesday or not, which if they don't, there's no purpose for us to fly down there.
Yeah. Good, very good. Very nice. Very nice. That's an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I forgot the audio setting. That is such an easy thing to miss.
That's fine. In fact, if you can incorporate some of the Kali Linux command line utilities and some of the DOS command line utilities, most people and most of the students came in once Windows introduced and they use the mouse. Some you and I knows the change directories and all those DOS commands and in the Linux command. So maybe I'll get a list of them, or I can provide you the list and then just put it on one of the weekly discussion or additional learning resources.
Good. Well, and so that's with the 501, I was able to get this nice framework. I'm a curator now for that for IGU, and so I've been incorporating that. Well, I did last term, but not as much. But this term we're doing more of that. So they're getting at least a taste of both Linux and Windows.
Yeah, those are the one I used with the labs are those kind of Linux commands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a different breed of students who never been exposed to DOS and Linux command. So all is well. Thank you very much. We
Yep.
appreciate your time and effort altogether. Great presentation. Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you
Talk to
Tuesday.
you soon. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.